So first I wanted to just let you know about the courses that we offer. In the middle schools, you probably know Latin is required from grades 6 to 8, so that's not reflected up there. But once they get to 9th grade, they can either continue on with Latin or they can choose to begin Spanish or French. And we offer college prep honors and AP in all 3 languages. And next year, we're also excited to offer Intro to Ancient Greek, which will be for juniors and seniors, and that will be an elective. So we'll move on to the next one. So the objectives for us, first and foremost, we feel very strongly that everyone is capable of learning a second language and that everyone would be benefited by it. And our objectives are that we will continually be developing the 4 skills of listening, speaking, reading, and writing, and that to gain knowledge and understanding of other cultures, to make cultural and linguistic comparisons, to make connections with other subjects, and to participate in communities both at home and around the world in other languages. So those are the objectives for all of our languages. One of my goals this year has been to expand our interdisciplinary projects between world languages and art. And so here are just a few that I wanted to highlight. Certainly we have more. But recently, Mr. Fuller's 8th grade Latin class did a really fascinating unit on the concept of self. They looked at statues and monuments. Students analyzed the facial expressions, for example, in statues to kind of think about what that statue might be thinking, and they connected that with the concept of self. And at the same time, those same 8th graders in Miss Cloutman's art class did their self-portraits. Or if they weren't comfortable doing a self-portrait, they could do a portrait of someone else. And so both of those teachers worked collaboratively, and we'll have that project on display soon. And also at our next Arts Night in the spring. So we have also some really interesting ones. We've got French Impressionism and drawing and painting. So Miss Norton's drawing and painting students did a reproduction of some famous French Impressionist works. Those same students who took French wrote a description and analysis of the painting in French and then did a presentation in French for their French class. And also in the fall, Miss Terrell, who's an art teacher here, she was a guest lecturer for Mr. Clark's Spanish 4 film class. She did a presentation on the Mexican artist Frida Kahlo right before his class watched the movie Frida about the artist. So here's some highlights of some of the major milestones that we've had in the last 5 years. I became department head in 2013, so I picked that year. When I started, we had an incredibly strong Latin program, but a lot of our focus was solely Latin in terms of our celebrations and what we recognize. So I've really worked hard to expand our other world languages while still keeping our Latin program just as strong. So just to give you some examples, we celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month. That's in the fall. And all of these I'll be giving you a little bit more information in the upcoming slides. We also have a Flamenco Workshop. We had them come for the first time 2 years ago, thanks to a cultural innovation grant. And these are flamenco artists and musicians, which is a dance that's originally from Spain. And so they came to interact with our Spanish students, and they showed them how to do the dance. They brought the flamenco music with their guitars, and students got to actually practice the steps with them, and it was really incredible. Students said it was one of the best things that we had done all year, and we're bringing them back later this May. And I should mention that they also came to one of our community meetings and did just a brief performance, so we're excited to have them come back. And it's just an example of how we want the language to come alive. We don't want to just study it from a textbook, but we want students to experience it authentically. Whoops. Wasn't quite ready, sorry. I don't know if you know how to go back. Thanks. We also celebrate National Foreign Language Week. We actually just wrapped that up again this year. It's celebrated every March, and I'll be showing a slide of some of the things that we did. I've also expanded the national assessments that we give. So in addition to the National Latin exam, we now also do the National Spanish exam. This will be our third year doing that. And we just finished our second year doing the National French contest. And the last milestone that I'll speak about is that we launched the National Spanish Honor Society, which is AMSA's first academic-specific honor society. And I started that with a group of 30 students in the fall. So I'll tell you a little bit about that too. So just to kind of go through those a little bit more. So Hispanic Heritage Month, this is something that we celebrate in the fall for a month. And some of the things that we do is we have morning announcements related to Hispanic topics and major achievements. We also decorate, we had a huge wall of famous Latinos and their achievements. And we did some songs over the morning announcements that were in Spanish. We also celebrate Day of the Dead. So what we did the last 2 years, we had a workshop after school that was done in collaboration between Spanish and art teachers. And any students in the high school could come and they could paint sugar skulls. And they learned a little bit about the Mexican tradition. That was a lot of fun. And there's a lot that we did certainly in our Spanish classes as well to recognize that. So we also just recently celebrated National Foreign Language Week, which is in March. We kind of extended that over the course of almost 3 weeks because of all the snow days. So one thing that we do is we have different students say each morning, good morning and have a great day in a different language. So we've had students say it in French, Spanish, Creole, Portuguese, Russian, Arabic, Farsi. I'm still always looking to continue to offer that. So whenever I have a student come up to ask me if they can do that, I absolutely say sure. So I think we might actually have someone say it in Navajo tomorrow. So I look forward to that. Wow. We also put some decorations up in the cafeterias. So we had an international flag banner from countries from all over the world. We had, you'll see, it says Celebrate National Foreign Language Week on the top picture. We had on the different cafeteria tables, we had a little table tent of how to say hello in different languages. And we decorated the bulletin board with greeting words from languages from all over the world. So again, it just, the point being that we want to celebrate AMSA's rich cultural, linguistic diversity, and really not just AMSA, but our community at large. So that is what we try to do with that. That's the international flag banner that we had up. And so I wanted to tell you a little bit more about the National Spanish Honor Society, which again is AMSA's first academic-specific honor society. I am the advisor for that, and I'm really excited to be doing that. We inducted 30 students, most of whom are juniors, and then several seniors. And some of the criteria is similar to the National Honor Society. They have to have at least a 3.5 unweighted GPA. They have to meet a certain grade requirement in Spanish, and certainly meet the character criteria as well. The mission of that is to celebrate students' achievements in Spanish, to foster their growth in the language, and also to really encourage community service that is related to Latino causes in the area, but also to the whole community at large. So one community service that we're just finishing up now is a food drive. It's a food and toiletry drive. Actually, we have one of the posters up here in the cafeteria. And it's going on until tomorrow, so there's still time to bring something in. And that is going to be donated to the Marlborough Food Pantry as well as the Spanish American Center in Leominster. And students have to complete at least 15 hours of community service. The last milestone that I wanted to talk about are how we've expanded the national assessments. So again, we've been offering the National Latin exam for quite some time now, I would say for at least 10 years. And our students have always consistently performed very well. Last year we had 3 students with gold, 6 silver medals, 5 bronze medals, and 5 honorable mentions. This year was also the first year that we began using an online National Latin exam on the computer, which worked a lot more smoothly, so I think we'll continue to do that. It's a lot easier than paper and pencil and bubbling and all that. National Spanish exam, this will be the third year that we're offering that. And this is a great way to measure our students against other students nationwide, to use the national standards. It's also a good way of sort of tracking our data and seeing how our students are doing, and a good way to prepare them also for the AP exam. So we will have students do that in early April, all Spanish students. Last year, we had a number of students that earned medals, 6 of them with gold, 14 silver, 7 bronze medals, and almost 40 honorable mentions. And then also want to talk about the National French Contest. We just offered that for the second time, so they just did that last week with Madame Zobro. And last year, Kate Longinova, who is now a junior, got a perfect score on the French exam, which is absolutely unbelievable. It's an extremely difficult test, and she scored in the top 0.01%. So her picture was in a national French journal for that. So we're really proud of her, and very thankful to Madame Zobro for helping to prepare her as well. And I should mention with that none of these milestones would have been possible without my amazing department. I'm extremely fortunate to have rock solid teachers in the world languages and art, and I'm really, really grateful for them. I want to talk about the vision. So three areas that I wanted to talk about briefly. First is to expand the language selection at AMSA. Second, to introduce languages earlier on in student careers. And then third, by doing so, to then offer more flexibility in the language selection. So those are the 3 points that I'm going to talk about right now. Just sort of my big vision for change. So we want to offer more language selection, and something that I've been thinking about for quite some time that I would very much like to happen and make it reality is to introduce Mandarin at AMSA. It is the most widely spoken language in the world, and is spoken in addition to China, several other countries, Malaysia, Taiwan, Singapore, Indonesia, etc. It is also the third most commonly spoken language in the United States, and that continues to grow each year because more and more schools are offering it. It is really the language that needs to be offered, and I'll get into that more in a moment. China's also really emerged in the global economy. It's one of the U.S.'s most major trading partners, and it's certainly a critical language to know for business and trade. So those are some of the reasons why. I did research on other schools that are offering Mandarin. This is by no means an exhaustive list. This is just a sampling. I could have easily filled up multiple more slides. But just so that you are aware, Acton Boxborough, these are all schools that offer Mandarin. Acton Boxborough, Concord Carlisle, Framingham, Hopkinton, Lexington, Marlborough, Needham, Wayland, Wellesley, Westboro, and Westwood. So again, this is by no means exhaustive. It is getting to be where it is almost about as commonly offered as Spanish. So the other point of my vision that I wanted to explain is that in addition to expanding the language selection to include Mandarin, the vision is also to introduce languages earlier on in student careers and to give them more flexibility. So the idea would be that students would continue to learn Latin in the 6th grade along with Greek and Roman mythology, and that's something that is very well aligned with our history and art curricula. So we want to maintain that, and we also believe that Latin is good for building their foundation in Romance languages. The change would be that starting in the 7th grade, instead of being required to continue on with Latin, that they would be able to choose either French, Latin, Mandarin, or Spanish. So that would be the change. We feel that there are many benefits to that model. One being that this would give the students the ability to study a language for 6 consecutive years. So from 7th grade all the way through their 12th grade. Whereas now students for French and Spanish only have the ability to do that starting in 9th grade, so they have a maximum of 4 years. And we find for French and Spanish that we unfortunately have to race through a lot of material. We only get through level 3 before AP, whereas at most other schools they get through level 4 before AP. So it's very challenging with our current curriculum to get where we need to be for Spanish and French. And by having 2 more consecutive years of study, that would also enable us to really delve so much deeper in the material, to do more cultural enrichment. Naturally, we would have the ability to build their proficiency more because we'd have 2 more years. And with all of that, they would be better prepared for the advanced placement exam as well. So before I move on to art, does anyone have any questions or comments that they want to talk about with world languages or, yes?
So this is great. Thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank
and
you.
I have 2 questions. One, just from what you just said about cutting the Latin requirement from 2 years to 1.
It'd be 3 to 1.
3 to 1. So what's the cost of that? What do you sacrifice?
Of course, and that is the next big step, which, I mean, step 1 is getting people's support and approval from starting with, of course, Dr. Lewis and Ms. Lindsay. Also your support and approval, and then I need to further look into the fiscal aspect of it. It is a little difficult to fully answer that question because it depends on what students choose, right? So we do have, I can tell you that we have a new teacher this year, Blair Clarkson, who is licensed to teach both French and Spanish, which I think will be really helpful. We also have another teacher, Miss Maria Arteaga, who is capable of teaching both French and Spanish. So we do have some flexibility, and they're also open to learning and growing with Latin, which is really incredible.
Oh, I didn't mean the financial cost. I mean,
I'm sorry.
Is there something magical about, like that first year of Latin in terms of foundation? For
okay.
Like
I see. I thought you meant the financial.
Education.
Oh, okay. Is there something? So why the need to continue on with Latin?
No,
for 1 year?
I mean, there's
What
costs and
happens
benefits.
if you give up years 2 and 3? What is
What are you really
the
doing?
downside of that?
I
Thank you.
personally feel that the benefits outweigh any potential drawbacks. Of course, I in no way want to underestimate the value of Latin. You know, Latin has many values, and it helps to build our foundation in Romance languages. It helps to build our English vocabulary. However, I also feel that I feel like it would be more advantageous to give students the option, because then that would perhaps make them more engaged in class if they're choosing to take a particular language instead of having it be a requirement. And I guess what I'm saying is that the benefits outweigh any potential risk. And again, they would still have the ability to continue on with Latin. Certainly, we want to keep the Latin program strong, and we have a really large, strong Latin club that I imagine will continue to stay active.
And the other question I had was, and you sort of touched on it a couple of times, but what does the variety of languages that are already spoken by the families at AMSA, how does that affect your thinking about, and we call them foreign languages, but they're not foreign to the people who speak them at home. So how does that affect your thinking about the language program?
Sure. Yeah, we do have a number of students who speak Spanish and Portuguese in the home, and that we welcome their experiences at home, and we feel like they have a lot to add in terms of, for example, there are many different ways of saying an expression in Spanish depending on which country that you're from. So it's important for us when we're teaching that language to recognize the various dialects and cultures from the different countries, and not just talk about Spain, for example. I can tell you what we're doing also. I have had a number of students recently, if 8th graders take a language placement test, if they speak Spanish at home already, or even Portuguese at home, to make sure that they're placed in the right level. So it might be that they could jump into Spanish too, or it might be that if they're not quite ready and they need, maybe they speak it fluently, but they need some more writing and grammar practice, and then I'll review that with them over the course of the year to get them more ready to take the language in the high school. So you're right, we do need to be very cognizant of students and their other languages that they speak at home. It is interesting to note, I did look to see, as you can see on that list, well, you can't see it anymore, but it was on there before.
Right.
That's okay, Mark, it's okay, thank you. Although Portuguese is a very commonly spoken language, it's actually very rare for schools to offer it as a language, which is interesting. Hudson does offer Portuguese and Spanish, but there were almost no schools that offered Portuguese. Having said that, I think, perhaps we can start a Portuguese club or Portuguese student group. That might be something else that we could do.
It's also very interesting the way you talk about, say, using the example of Spanish, is that you use that as a way to accelerate the growth of those kids in Spanish. So they're strong in Spanish, is strong, maybe the so they can leapfrog over certain steps, because in so many school systems and so many communities, people consider the second language a handicap. It's a handicap that somebody speaks Spanish. They're not bilingual, they're ELL. And so that you're looking at it that way, I think, is really
absolutely.
important.
It's definitely not something that I see as a handicap. I mean, if we have students who are already speaking a second language at home, such as Spanish or Portuguese, I think that's a real asset.
Or Farsi or
Of course.
Mandarin.
Knowing any other language besides English is a huge asset. But certainly in terms of if they're studying another Romance language and they already know a Romance language, then certainly that can only help them.
Great, thank you.
Has the
Oh,
ELL
sorry.
program affected what you do? Because they get pulled out, right, from these languages?
It has a little bit, and ELL is not under me, but I can speak about it a little bit to the best of my ability. They are pulled out more in the middle school, so I would say that it definitely impacts Latin primarily, because often if they need to be pulled for either reading or ELL, they'll be pulled out of their Latin class so that they can focus on building their
So that's
English
hurt
skills.
Latin.
You could say that. I mean, naturally, that student is not going to get as much Latin study. However, we do feel that it's first and foremost they need to make sure that they are strong in their reading and writing in English, and then certainly they are invited to go back to Latin as they if they perform out of the ELL program, they can go back to take in Latin, and if they express a real interest in Latin, then they can study on the outside and also have the option of continuing on with it in high school. So if there's that interest there, I know our Latin teachers work with those ELL students when
But
they
you
return.
don't see it as hurting your program?
The ELL?
Yeah.
No, not at
Okay.
all.
All right.
I mean, it's we have to meet the needs of all of our students, and what's in our students' best interest.
Of course.
When it comes to ELL, would be to give them the support that they need
Oh, I know
with
that.
English.
The question is, what does it do to you in your program?
I don't see it as
Okay.
being I kind of see it as a separate
Okay.
issue.
Sarah?
Yeah.
As Chris said already, Sarah, I think this is excellent. I'm just wondering, is there any industry surveys or industry resources that you also use maybe to help shape the courses that we offer here that tie into, say, future jobs and where the industries are headed from a particular job perspective?
So, yeah, I think you raise a tremendous point, and actually something that I would love to do is to perhaps have guest speakers come to our foreign language classrooms that talk about not just, obviously it's awesome to be a teacher, I love that, but what other opportunities are there professionally in that language? And there are so many opportunities, and I know that we do the career fair at the end of the year where students have an opportunity to meet with people from all different professions. It would be terrific if we could do that type of thing.
Sure.
Perhaps in the foreign language classroom. So you raise a good point, and I'd like to do more with that. I mean, I will say that when we talk to our 8th graders about what the different languages that we offer and some of the strengths that each language has. We try to get into some of the professional benefits of them, but there is more that I'd like to do with that. So
Yeah, that would be
you raise
great,
a good
because then we're
point.
giving them a competitive advantage.
Absolutely.
As they go through college and then on afterwards. So, and my other question is more technical. What's a sugar skull?
Oh,
I don't want to go home thinking about that.
okay, yeah. So a sugar skull. So first of all, the skull is a symbol that is commonly used with the Mexican holiday of the Day of the Dead, because in that culture, they feel that death is not the end, but it's more a continuation going into the afterlife. And so the skull is not seen as a morbid image, but rather something that they like to see is connected to life. So the sugar skull that you saw there is literally, it's made out of, it is edible, although we told the students that it was not, because they were painting on them and using feathers and such. So you'll see them if you were to go to a Mexican bakery at the time of the Day of the Dead at the end of October, along with Pan de los Muertos.
Okay.
And it's something that when they are done painting it, they can put it on the altar, and they create sort of an altar in their house where by the mantle in their fireplace, it's a time for them to honor their loved ones who have passed away. And so they'll put on their altar, in addition to the skulls, they'll have maybe a picture of their loved one and some of their favorite objects next to that, and they feel that their loved ones who have passed are with them on that day.
That helps.
Long answer. I don't know if I.
No, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel better now.
When I Google it. Could I add something to your question in regard to Ms. Preston's desire for Mandarin? I mean, as Ms. Preston said, Mandarin is the most spoken language in the world, third most spoken language in America. China's, I think, the second largest economy in the world, perhaps will be the first by 2050. I think in general, and not just in foreign language, but in the history department too, and ELA, we're trying to pay more attention to Asia, which is long overdue. Our curriculum from 2005 was very heavily focused on Europe and European history and culture. Certainly very, very important. Don't want to deny that at all. But I think we do need to pay much closer attention in foreign language, in history, in literature to Asia.
Yes, very good point.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so should I move on with art? And this is not quite as long, so if you're starting to get tired. So students are required to take 1 credit of art, and here are the courses that we offer for the high school. We have chorus, we have Western Art Masterpieces, which is essentially an art history course, drawing and painting, 3-dimensional art, printmaking, multicultural art, digital media, which is a new course offered this year that I'll talk about a little bit more in my next slide, and AP Studio Art. And that is the course that is the only course that is 1 credit. The other ones are all half a credit. And prior to taking AP Studio Art, they need to have taken Western Art Masterpieces in drawing and painting. So digital media, we're really excited about this course. Again, this is the first year that we're offering it. It is a course that is interdisciplinary, that is co-taught by computer science teacher Mr. Alvarez, as well as art teacher Mr. Morgan. They teach side by side in a computer lab, and they build off each other's strengths and expertises. And the main areas of study in the class are digital photography, graphic design, animation, and video. And next year, we will be offering that again. And we hope that in the future, with better facilities, that we'll be able to offer a media lab that's exclusively for this course, that we can offer more sections of that. It was extremely popular. We had way more students sign up than we could teach for this particular course. We were only able to offer 1 section because of the lab availability. So our visual art objectives come from the National Art Standards, and students will be able to use the symbolic language of the visual arts. learn about the history and criticism of visual arts and architecture, their role in the community, and their links to other disciplines. Our curriculum is very closely tied to history in the middle school, and so that's something that is really, we have a lot of interdisciplinary connections there. Also, to see their own personal style and discriminate among historical and contemporary styles, understand how societal influences and prejudices may affect viewers' ways of perceiving works of art, which is something that we get into more at the high school level, particularly in the multicultural art class, and develop an idea through multiple stages responding to criticism and self-assessment, something that we do in depth in the AP Art in particular. Arts Nights, we just celebrated our 5th anniversary, and I think that each year we've gotten a little bit better, certainly with the visual arts. What we do now in terms of how we decorate and display it all, I think has really grown. I'm really grateful to FAME, to the Friends of Arts and Music Education, for parent volunteers who have really given us a lot of support with our Arts Nights and our arts program. So we have Arts Nights in both winter and spring. We had one in late January, and it is a way to celebrate AMSA's visual arts and performing arts. So, for example, in January we had the chorus perform under Mrs. Jessica Bowen, and also the a cappella group also under her. We had the jazz band perform, or 2 jazz bands I should say. Drama club did a skit, and hopefully I covered all of them. And then in addition to the performing arts, we have the artwork that's on display, everything from 6th grade all the way up to 12th grade AP. And I think we have really incredibly talented students, and it's nice to, you may not know that your students are so talented artistically if you only see them in the academic classroom, right? So I think it's nice to recognize that other side of a student, and to not only celebrate students for their academic or athletic achievements, but to also to celebrate their artistic achievements as well. And I would just say also that certainly an auditorium and music room would do wonders for the experience here. I think we all know that. Obviously, the acoustics are not ideal in the cafeteria. And also it would be nice if we didn't have to, we put a lot of work and time into decorating the cafeteria and transforming the whole space for Arts Night, but sadly we have to take it all down. So the work is only up for a few hours, and then we have to take it all down, and it would be nice to have a way that we can display all the talented students' work on a more long-term basis. So that's something else. And I should say that our Spring Arts Night is coming up on Wednesday, May 23rd, so I invite you all to come to that. It really is incredible to see what our students can do. I also wanted to recognize 2 art students who just were recognized by the Boston Scholastic Art and Writing Awards for their visual artwork. And unfortunately I don't yet have the artwork to show you, but that will be coming up soon, I hope, on an AMSA update. So Anna Cherkinsky, who is a junior, so class of 2019, she received the highest award, which is the Gold Key, for her painting A Dog Walk, and she will represent AMSA as she competes nationally from the National Scholastic Office. She's extremely, extremely talented. She's an AP Art. Indy May, who is only a freshman, and those of you who came to Spring Arts Night, if I were to show some of her artwork, I'm sure you would be like, oh my gosh, she's the one. She's so incredibly talented, and she also is in the jazz band. She received the Silver Key, which is the 2nd highest honor for her painting Anthena Persephone. And so again, watch for their pictures and more details about that in the AMSA update. So this is a very condensed version of the vision, because I know there's only so much time in the day, but I do want to say that clearly we are hoping at some point when we have new facilities for really dedicated performance and rehearsal spaces. So an auditorium and music rooms, which would allow us to have our plays be performed, musical shows, art shows, all of that. we also are looking to have prominent locations to showcase student artwork year-round, so that we can have, glass display cases, for example. We'd like to do more with online galleries. It has been really great, I should say, with Mr. Finkel. He's done so much with the AMSA update, with all of our different media, to get a lot of pictures and news out there that wasn't out there before. So that's been nice, and I'd like to expand that even more with some online galleries. We'd also like to have dedicated full-time staff that's for chorus and band, so that we can also have more music offerings. And as I mentioned a little bit before, to have a visual media lab, so a lab that's dedicated specifically for visual media with all the cutting-edge professional equipment, so that we can offer more for students in the way of that. So I know, a lot of dreaming big here, and all of this costs money, but I have to at least put it out there.
Right, never stop
Picked the
dreaming.
perfect night, though.
Yeah.
Because we're kicking
Yep.
off the campaign tonight, so.
So
Maybe you can use the art night as a fundraiser.
I know, yes, we are always,
Auction out the art.
we are always doing fundraising at the arts nights and putting those resources towards our arts programs, absolutely. So the lastly, I just wanted to mention that next year we're excited to be launching the National Art Honor Society. That will be launched in the fall under art teacher Miss Terrell. So that should be the second academically specific honor society here. And that will be a way to give our art students opportunities for scholarships, to recognize them nationally, and to also connect them with students nationwide. So that's something that we're looking forward to doing next year.